What's good, YouTube? Today I am joined by Joe Frankino, and he is a man behind the articles you might see on Konami blog and TCG Player. TCG Player has started doing articles, and they've been doing them for a while, right?
Yeah, they've been doing them for quite a while. I only started doing them in 2013.
Yeah, I've seen them pop up here and there, but a lot of people don't know because they go to sources like YouTube and they'd rather be told than written to, but there's a lot of really good writing over here on TCG Player, and so this article that you've just written is on public knowledge, because public knowledge has been conveyed to be very different than what it is.
Yeah, I think there's a really big difference between what players think public knowledge is and what tournament policy and game rules actually define public knowledge to be.
So let's go ahead and talk about what public knowledge is.
Sure. All right, so public knowledge is defined in two places, first in the rulebook and in Konami Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG policy documents. In the rulebook, public knowledge is defined as the number of cards in your main deck, extra deck, the face-up cards in your extra deck, the identity of the cards in the graveyard, so on and so forth. Tournament policy defines public knowledge as other things, which if you read the article, you can get this in better detail. But essentially, it defines it as just basically any notes you take, the life point count, and any turn counters, so on and so forth, like that.
And the notes you can take are very limited.
Yes, note taking in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very limited. You can only take it on current life points, any mandatory turn counters, or any mandatory effects that have to activate or resolve.
Excuse me. So, when we get into situations where people are like, you have to tell me what that card is, it's public knowledge, what does this mean in comparison to that? Okay,
so with a lot of effects recently that have come out in recent sets, such as the Metal Foes or the Magic Spectators that set cards directly from the deck, the cards are public knowledge only when the card resolves. So you take out your Magic Spectator Tornado or your Metal Foes counter and you put it in one of your spell and trap zones. It's public knowledge when that effect initially resolves, because you have to reveal, then you put it face down. But once it's face down, it's just a set card on the field. So if your opponent asks you 2 turns later, is that one the Metal Foes counter, you don't have to answer yes or no. You could just say it's a set card on the field. They have to remember that it's Metal Foes counter.
Yeah, what they can do is ask what Metal Foes counter does at that point, correct?
But yes, because...
But I'm sorry. They cannot have you directly reveal it. So if... what a lot of people would try to do in that situation too is try to get you to look at which one is Metal Foes counter and read it off. Also, but you should know the effects of your own cards.
Yes. The text of any card and like the attributes or whatever of any specifically named card is public knowledge. You may ask that at any time. So in other words, if you think your opponent's, let's say your opponent's playing Gravekeepers, if we're going way back, and you just forget that Gravekeeper Spy is 2,000 defense, you can ask, hey, what's Gravekeeper Spy defense? And you have the right to know that it's 2,000.
And here we also see that you don't have to identify cards set by Quaking Mirror Force, and other situations that involve like Magic Spectre setting Tornado and Tempest.
Right. So, yeah. Quaking Mirror Force. Yeah, Quaking Mirror Force is a little bit unusual though, because you don't get to know that. Like, hey, is that let's say, I don't know, Ignis or Prominence. Like, you don't get to know that it's specifically Ignis or Prominence if it was set by Quaking Mirror Force. But because Quaking Mirror Force says you can't change the position of the card, that's something that both you and your opponent need to know. So you can say this was set by Quaking Mirror Force, but you don't have to answer which one it specifically is.
Yeah, so basically it's on the player to remember what is where. Now, the player in control of the cards cannot be switching where they are after they are set, though.
Correct, yeah, that's part of game rules. Once a card is placed on the field, it can't switch except by card effect, and no one plays any of the cards that switch positions of where the zones are placed.
What's that one card that blows up based on zones? Blasting the Fuse or something?
Blasting Fuse, yes.
So, Let's also talk about something that you and I talked about before this, and that is players will say that you cannot sit down and reveal a card on your extra deck, such as Dante, but you're not playing Burning Abyss, you're playing another strategy and you have it only in there for cherries, but you sit down and put it face up. I believe in your article you touch on, there is no rule against giving information.
Right, yeah. When I did the research for my article, I looked at the rule book, I looked at policy, and I went to see, like, is there anything specifically that says you can't? And the only things I really saw was that in the rule book, the extra deck is placed face down, and it makes no mention of anything else. So, not prohibited, but not specifically allowed. It's, you know, it's a little bit of a gray area, but
during gameplay, it must be face down.
Yeah, during gameplay, it absolutely has to be face down because that's where it has to be. But otherwise, there's nothing saying you can't, but there's nothing saying that you are allowed to either. So again, it's a gray area, but it's not something that a judge can just randomly give you an infraction for, because what's the infraction? There's nothing defined in the penalty guidelines.
All right, and are there any final notes you would like to add to this article and for TCG articles in general?
My only real note is that if a player does ask you, hey, which one's the Metal Folks counter, you just be polite about it. Just say, like, I'm sorry, it's not public knowledge. And you know, it can seem abrasive, or it could seem like you're, you know, like you still want to be nice, but you also want to try to win the game as well. So just try to be nice about it. TCG Player, there's a whole bunch of good articles by a bunch of very talented writers on there. TCG Player also goes over, like, if you like casual decks, there's there. If you like competitive decks, those are covered as well. And it's just a lot of content, no matter what you like in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. So definitely check out yu-gi-oh.tcgplayer.com for my articles and others.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Be sure to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed it, and check out some of these other videos that you can click on.